Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Fundamentals of Managing Multiple VISTA Project Sites. We're excited to be with you today to talk about how to build and create relationships between intermediaries and sites, how to manage multiple VISTA project sites, and provide you specific examples of what is currently done by some of our great VISTA projects that leads to successful project management. My name is Eric Powell, and I'm an AmeriCorps VISTA training specialist with the Corporation for National and Community Service, which this year is celebrating 25 years of national service. I proudly served as a VISTA member in 2006 with Rhode Island Campus Compact and a VISTA leader in 2008 with Illinois Campus Compact, and now I'm happy to be on staff with the VISTA training unit. In my current role, I work with supervisors and sponsors to provide training on various elements of the VISTA program and answer questions as needed. Today, I'll be hosting the webinar as well as facilitating the chat activities and the live Q&A at the end of the session. Also joining us are Kim and Jeff from our partners at LSI, who will be managing the Zoom technology. You will also see them in the chat panel posting some links and some questions, as well as assisting with various aspects of the webinar. I'm also thrilled beyond belief to have with us today two guest speakers to talk about their current real-life experience with managing multiple VISTA project sites, and they will share their suggestions and ideas with you. Jamie Rich of FIRST and Laura Martin of the University of Mississippi McLean Institute for Public Service and Community Engagement. They're both eager to share some challenges, successes, and examples with you that will engage us in conversation and give you ideas on how to create and enhance successful relationships with your VISTA project sites. I'll officially introduce them with a little bit more detail in a few minutes. The goals for our session today are as follows. We hope that you will be able to define the different project sponsor models in the VISTA program, describe characteristics of good relationships between intermediary and site, cite examples of ways to better and more effectively manage your sites, and also develop action steps that you can take and customize to your project and your site. Before we talk about definitions and responsibilities, Laura and Jamie, I'm going to ask you a fairly quick question before we get started. My guess is that many VISTA projects are probably concerned, maybe nervous, perhaps excited about the work involved in managing multiple sites. We know it can be time-consuming, sometimes challenging, and a lot more work on top of your already busy schedule. So, from your perspective and your experience, what excites you about managing multiple sites and being able to help create and maintain good relationships? What do you do to put the fun in the fundamentals of managing multiple sites?
This is Laura, and my answer would be site visits. Even when they involve 4 hours of driving, site visits are always the best part of my work. Nothing compares to the dedication contained within the 4 walls of our community partner sites. As someone who works in communities across Mississippi but isn't from here, site visits have become a way for me to deepen my learning about the state and to gain critical insight into how I can better support our members and supervisors.
Hi, and this is Jamie. At FIRST, our sites feel like family. It's always fun to connect and learn from them, whether through a training call, a site visit, or a concern that they bring to our attention. We see our site supervisors a few times a year, so focusing on relationship building and communication is really key for us.
Those are really great quick ideas, and I know that those fun ideas make a huge difference to your VISTA project and to your VISTA members. And it's okay to have fun at work, within reason, of course. So take the leads that Laura and Jamie just mentioned and think about how you can look at this through a positive and opportunistic lens. How can you add some fun and zest to the managing of your sites and your VISTA project? Speaking of zest, use the chat panel now to enter your ideas on how you do or how you can add zest and fun and excitement to your VISTA project. What I mean is, how do you really make managing multiple VISTA project sites exciting, rewarding, enjoyable? We would love to see your responses, and of course, I'm sure that you will as well. It might give you some great ideas, and don't forget to take note of some of the great ideas you see in the chat and that you heard from Jamie and Laura. Your sites will probably be pleased to have some fun elements added to the work, and your members will as well. Small things can make a huge difference, especially as it pertains to VISTA member retention, satisfaction, and commitment to their year of service. And I see a few people commenting on that question, so that's great. Keep those coming, and we'll come back to them a little bit later. So let's begin with some definitions of words and phrases to make sure that we all understand the terminology that we are using. Sometimes information is not fully understood, and we want to be all in this together. Then we'll talk about the responsibilities that all VISTA projects have, as well as the responsibilities of each. And remember, you can use the links in the chat panel to download a copy of today's presentation for taking notes, along with a helpful links document connecting you to various resources on the VISTA campus. You're probably already aware that the VISTA program has different models of VISTA project sponsors and supervisors. Hopefully, you have an idea of which project model you are, as it helps you know how to structure your program and look for support and examples from supervisors in the same project model. It can also be good to understand what other models exist in an effort to see how different projects accomplish different things based on their structure. The VISTA program has 3 models of project sponsor and supervisor: intermediary, multi-site, and single site. As you can see in the image on the screen, the CNCS state or regional office oversees and approves all project models. On the left is the VISTA sponsor that is a single site project. On the right is the typical structure of an intermediary VISTA sponsor. And I say typical because we know things change slightly from project to project. And then multi-site VISTA sponsors look a little bit similar to the intermediary, except instead of the intermediary at the top, you would just have multiple VISTA sites as part of the same organization, then the site supervisors, then the VISTA members, with the project director being at one of the sites. So we'll spend a few minutes going into each one in detail. An intermediary sponsor, often called a project sponsor or project supervisor, is an organization that completed the application to have a VISTA project. In this example, the intermediary is the main organization that is responsible for managing the project, overseeing the management of members, reporting information to CNCS, and more. The intermediary must have a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, with each of its sites, as the sites are actually different 501c3 nonprofit organizations. This MOU outlines the requirements and guidelines that the intermediary requires for that site to be a site, and the intermediary is responsible for ensuring that the sites follow what is in the MOU. The intermediary is also responsible for training each site on their responsibilities. And I know a few of you in the chat mentioned that's part of the training that you provide, is going over the VISTA Sponsor Handbook and details about the requirements of sites. Each organization or site is also responsible for day-to-day supervision of the VISTA members and passing information up to the intermediary. Multi-site projects are structured somewhat similar to an intermediary, at least in terms of managing the VISTA member. There would be a project director who likely submitted the application to have a VISTA project, several sites, and supervisors for each VISTA member. The project director is still responsible for training the sites on their responsibilities, and each site location is responsible for day-to-day supervision of VISTA members. The difference is that with a multi-site VISTA project, the sites are all typically part of the same organization. Instead of the sites being different nonprofit organizations, each site in a multi-site project is the same organization, just at a different location. Let me give you an example. Some VISTA projects may perhaps be a food bank, and the food bank applied for VISTA members to do capacity building activities in expanding the program and outreach. The food bank may have multiple locations with VISTA members at each location, but each location is still that food bank, just in a different city. It is one organization with multiple sites. Single-site VISTA projects manage everything on their own. The VISTA project exists at only one site, and that one project manages the VISTA project requirements of reporting, supervising the VISTA member, and more. The project director for this single site may also be the direct supervisor of the VISTA member, or it may be someone else. Single-site VISTA projects may have multiple VISTA members depending on what was approved in their application to the CNCS state or regional office. Each model of VISTA project has its own unique needs. Some aspects of one project model may also help another, but information required by intermediary projects would be different than that of single-site projects. You should also know your project well so that you have ideas on what resources you need to successfully manage the project and what assistance you need to effectively manage your site. So here's a quick summary of each of the models. You'll see that some of them have a few things in common, such as each one is responsible for making sure that the VISTA members have a supervisor. Each model may also do reporting in slightly different ways. For example, some intermediaries may have the individual sites submit reports to the intermediary, and then the intermediary compiles the reports into one report for CNCS, while other intermediaries may do it differently. Ultimately, when it comes to reports, they must be submitted on time, and you can consult your CNCS state or regional office if you have any questions about the reports or about your VISTA project. Though it sometimes is taken for granted, it is essential to discuss expectations and requirements early on between your project and your sites for increased understanding of what needs to be done, who is responsible for doing it, when it must be completed, and with whom they should communicate if there are questions. Be sure that you communicate well and often. We're going to do a very quick poll activity now. So in a minute, you'll see a poll show up on your screen, and you'll have approximately 30 seconds to submit your response because it is a pretty quick activity. The question we're asking is, which model of VISTA project sponsor or supervisor are you? No matter how your project started, things may have changed. We're asking this question in regards to your project model that you are in right now. You can only select one answer, and of course, your options are intermediary, multi-site, single site, or perhaps you're unsure, maybe you're new and you're still trying to figure things out. But by now, hopefully you have a pretty good idea of what the answer is. But again, if you're unsure, make sure you follow up with your project director or your CNCS state or regional office, because you'll definitely want to know the answer soon. Knowing what model of VISTA project sponsor or supervisor you are will help you more easily and more specifically craft your VISTA project in a way that all organization staff and VISTA supervisors know what is going on and also know what resources you need to successfully complete your project. It is also possible that some projects may change, such that they may start out as a single site project and later have the ability and resources and approval to expand into an intermediary. So with that, we'll go ahead and close the poll now, and we'll take a brief look at the results. So it looks like overwhelmingly 68% of you are intermediaries, 16% are multi-site, 15% are single site, and wow, 0% unsure. That's great. This gives us a really good idea of who's on the webinar, because this can really help us provide resources and information, not just on this webinar, but also as we go throughout the next couple of years. So thank you for that. Now that you know a little bit about each project model, we'll talk about general project responsibilities, especially with regards to having multiple sites. Just like with any program, especially one like VISTA, which is supported by taxpayer dollars, there are general requirements and responsibilities for VISTA projects. These should be no surprise to you. Managing VISTA project, which includes communicating with and managing the VISTA members, completing and submitting reports, and documenting any necessary items for CNCS. Ensuring all of your VISTA members have a supervisor and that they know who that person is. This probably seems obvious, but you would not believe the number of VISTA members who start service and they tell us on or around their first day of service, I don't know who my supervisor is, or they never told me who it is, or I'm reporting to my site and I don't know who to report to. So make sure that supervisors specifically mention that they are the VISTA member supervisor so that it is clearly understood. Other project responsibilities include ensuring that all of your VISTA members have their own VISTA assignment description or VAD, no matter how many VISTA members are part of the project. Communicating with CNCS state or regional office with questions, especially if situations arise such as VISTAs are missing or you want to remove your VISTA for some problem, etc. Also, as we mentioned earlier, having a memorandum of understanding with each of the sites if you're an intermediary. Reviewing the information in the VISTA Sponsor Handbook on the VISTA Campus, which provides more detail about your responsibilities and requirements as well as regulations. And also, completing any other requirements outlined by your CNCS state or regional office. As an intermediary or multi-site VISTA project, you may choose to assign additional responsibilities to your sites to help you manage the project more effectively. It's now time to hear from our great guest speakers about what they actually do to keep their project running smoothly and manage their sites effectively. We'll first hear them discuss some challenges that they encountered and a little bit about how they discovered that certain things did not work well for their program. They'll then talk about what they did, why it did not work, and how they realized it did not work. Hopefully their responses will help you be creative and think outside the box when it comes to ideas and suggestions for creating and enhancing relationships between your intermediary and your site. Our first speaker is Jamie Rich. Jamie Rich serves as the VISTA specialist for FIRST. In this role, she leads the FIRST VISTA program in connecting with underserved communities across the United States. The FIRST VISTA program currently has 29 members, including 4 VISTA leaders. In addition to the VISTA program, Jamie also spends 20% of her time working on the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion team at FIRST. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you, Eric. I'm so happy to be here and to share the first story of our project and to offer any advice or insight to other project sponsors who are looking for guidance.
Wonderful. We also have with us Laura Martin. Laura Martin serves as Associate Director of the McLean Institute for Public Service and Community Engagement at the University of Mississippi. In this role, she leads community partnership initiatives that advance transformation through service at the university and fight poverty through education in Mississippi. One of these initiatives is the North Mississippi VISTA Project, where 14 VISTA members and 1 VISTA leader serve at nearly as many sites across North Mississippi. The primary focus area of the North Mississippi VISTA Project is education, and the project has been fortunate to host as many as 25 VISTA Summer Associates and 13 VISTA members at once. Laura did proudly serve as an AmeriCorps member in Austin, Texas from 2006 to 2007, and she credits this experience with her commitment to addressing poverty through community and systems level change. Thank you for joining us, Laura.
Thank you so much, Eric. I'm really honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
We're happy to have both of you, so thank you for joining us today. We'll start by having you share some of the challenges that you've had with managing subsites and how you discovered ways to overcome those challenges. So I'll turn it over to Jamie to get started.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. While our headquarters is located in Manchester, New Hampshire, we have 18 sites located across the United States. So one of our main challenges that we have encountered is how to train our sites. Each site is in a different region, and the training needs for each can vary greatly. With multiple sites, we've also had the challenge of receiving consistent data back in the format that we need for our grant reports when we need it and in a timely manner. And of course, with the 18 sites and new locations applying every year, we also have the challenge of educating the host sites on what the AmeriCorps VISTA program is and what restrictions it contains. One of our greatest lessons to review is educating our sites on the difference between direct and indirect service. And we generally see about 1 to 2 cases of that per year.
Thank you, Jamie. We oftentimes start with talking about challenges because we really want to think about real difficult situations we encounter, because we know people do encounter challenges, and then transition to focus on how we can overcome the challenges and turn them into opportunity. I get the feeling that there are several people out there who do share some of those challenges that Jamie mentioned, and they can probably benefit from our methods of overcoming them. Laura, what challenges have you and your VISTA project encountered?
Sure. So, Eric, as you mentioned, the North Mississippi VISTA project is housed at the University of Mississippi, which is located in Oxford. We serve a 28-county area and have a combination of sites which are based on campus, in the immediate Oxford area, and also in communities that are up to 2 hours away. As you might imagine, our project staff and VISTA leaders see the campus and Oxford-based VISTA members much more frequently around campus and town and at community meetings. One challenge we have encountered is that the physical distance from campus can lead to a sense of isolation for members serving outside of the Oxford area. We do strive to create a sense of community among our members, supervisors, and partner organizations, but this can be really difficult to do when those folks do not find themselves in the same spaces. Finally, and I'm sure you all have experienced this, so much of our work is based on relationships. It can be difficult to build authentic and trusting relationships with people that you do not see on a daily basis, especially when we want to be part of the support system that helps members navigate challenges during their terms of service. One challenge that comes with managing multiple project sites is that there may be a lag in our learning about ways we can support our members, with anything from grant writing to the loss of a loved one to applying to graduate school. So as you'll hear, communication is so critical to foster these relationships.
Thank you, Laura. That was a lot of information, and it's pretty clear to me that a lot of the challenges you had are not simple challenges. And again, I'm guessing there's a lot of people on this webinar who also have some complex challenges. For example, you can't just cultivate a sense of community in one day. It takes time and resources and a lot of effort on your part, as well as on the part of the VISTA members and the sites. Both of you highlighted several significant challenges, and it's no surprise that there's a lot of other challenges out there. It's important to know how to best manage the multiple sites and handle the challenges, as well as knowing how to troubleshoot when something goes wrong and knowing what action steps to take to prevent future challenges. Know that you can do it. You can overcome these challenges and turn them into opportunities. It'll take some hard work, some focus, and support from your organization, your community, and other VISTA project staff, just like Jamie and Laura. You can always turn the impossible into the possible, as you are not alone and we are with you. To help you do it, we're going to talk about now what actually works well and how some VISTA projects have been successful at turning problems into possibilities. Let's talk about solutions, ideas, real-life examples. So without further ado, I'll turn it back over to Jamie to start us off on the positive path to persevere and prevail.
Thanks, Eric. To help overcome how different our sites are, we've developed and refined a detailed host site supervisor application to help ensure that we fully understand the needs of each site so that we can ensure that we're offering the proper training. We also have created a resource in addition to the VAD called a service planning workbook. This is a detailed outline, create with timeline of projects that VISTAs plan to complete for their year of service, and that we ask that all host site supervisors sign off on to make sure that everyone is on the same page and we're properly documenting the work that VISTAs are doing and keeping an eye on the projects that they're assigned. To help us with our data consistency challenge, we use a system called America Learns and ask our VISTAs to fill out monthly reports with the data that we need. This helps to ensure when we have a grant report due that we can pull the data in a consistent way. We can also use this tool to help us with tracking timesheets and VISTA time off. One of the key factors to our success with our many sites is because of the resources that we've created and provide for VISTAs and host site supervisors. We have multiple trainings recorded that we share and require VISTAs to attend biweekly training calls. We also require quarterly calls for our host site supervisors so that they're getting all of the information that they need to be successful in their roles. In addition, we require all host site supervisors to take an online course that we developed and verify that they've completed it to ensure that they understand our program and the restrictions. So that way there's no question over direct service or indirect service there. Lastly, communication is so key for us. We reach out to host site supervisors and VISTAs at least once a month, if not more, to review key program updates, key dates or reminders that they need to know of. And in addition, we also have a newsletter to highlight the accomplishments of our sites and send that out. So communication is really important for us.
Thank you, Jamie. Those are all great ideas because we all really love to hear about what works so we can build off of it. We love to hear about what makes us successful and what really helps us accomplish our goal. So thank you for sharing those details. I'm sure that there are more elements to your successes that you can share as we move forward, but for now I'll turn it back over to Laura to talk about her project successes and what works.
At the McLean Institute, we see ourselves as the conduit for creating, strengthening, and sustaining community campus partnerships. Because of this focus, leading the North Mississippi VISTA project is crucial to our mission. On the very first day of service, we invite all members to come to campus where we provide an in-person orientation that talks about the McLean Institute, AmeriCorps VISTA, and the North Mississippi VISTA project. We invite our members to see themselves as ambassadors for all of these entities and as part of a large and vibrant network of VISTA members. We also take advantage of this gathering to do fingerprinting. During the fall semester, we hold a gathering for supervisors where they are able to network and identify opportunities for collaboration. I have witnessed a number of partnerships emerge out of these luncheons. It's amazing what happens when you can provide food at a meeting. I know you all know this. Throughout the term of service, we also conduct 2 in-person site visits as well as regular professional development sessions. The topics for these sessions are recommended by our members, and we make them open to supervisors as well. We also provide a video conferencing option. The strategy I'm most proud of is the development of our geographic and thematic cluster areas. The primary focus area of the North Mississippi VISTA project is education, but within our partner sites, we have organizations that focus, for example, on literacy and others that provide out-of-school time enrichment. So in recognizing these commonalities across our sites, we have created thematic clusters as well as clusters of members serving the same geographic area. This has been really helpful to facilitate closer collaboration within our program. And finally, we celebrate our members. I mentioned food earlier. Around the holidays and at the end of the summer, we gather our members together with food to appreciate what they have accomplished individually and then also collectively as a project.
Thank you both, and it's clear that you've already sparked some ideas and resources because there's several people asking if they can get copies of examples, so we'll get to those a little bit later, but keep those questions coming because we certainly appreciate those. Sometimes you may even have the same thing that's a challenge that also could be a positive. Celebrating VISTA members could be a challenge in terms of knowing just what makes them feel special and valued because you don't want it to be too corny, but you also don't want it to feel forced. And it can be a positive because it helps reinforce why they are there and that their work is noticed and appreciated. So thank you, Laura, for those great ideas. In keeping with that idea, you both shared some really great examples of what you have seen work well and be effective with your sites. So now to all of you on this webinar, what works well for your VISTA project to effectively manage sites? We're asking you to please be specific because the more specific you are, the better. That'll help give supervisors and sponsor staff ideas on what they may want to try at their projects. Don't forget that while the intermediary manages the sites also may need to manage up to the intermediary to foster strong reciprocal relationships where everyone is teaching and learning. And since every project is different, every project may have its own way of accomplishing this task. So if you have a quick minute, just type, even if it's a few bullet points in the chat panel, what worked well for your VISTA project to effectively manage sites? What have you done at your VISTA project that really sets the tone? I know some of you earlier mentioned you do some really good orientations in person or over the phone. Constant communication, I totally echo that to Tam. They try not to assume everyone knows something and they try to make sure they get all the details. That's a critical component. I also like what Kayla said, regular scheduled meetings. It's important to have regular scheduled meetings and try not to miss them too much because even if you keep them short, it gives you enough time to really go over the detail and know that people are following through with what they ask. More weekly VISTA project check-ins. They host a webinar series. A lot of ideas coming in. So thank you for that. And if you do see great ideas coming in the chat as they're still coming in, you may want to copy and paste them into your email or into a Word document that you have them for the future, especially if you see some great ideas that your project can use. You want to be sure to share your challenges and successes on the Supervisor Cafe discussion forum, as this is a great way for you to support each other and share resources and ideas. This Supervisor Cafe discussion forum is sadly an underutilized resource that is intended to help supervisors connect and share with each other, so we would love to see you posting things on there. And as we're continuing to get more practical in terms of things that you can do at your project, I'll invite Jamie and Laura to offer up some additional examples of resources as well as suggestions for you to consider.
Great. So with each site location being so unique, really be sure that you're listening and hearing from each site regularly. You can do that by having those regular meetings with them, make sure that you're keeping them. Use surveys, find out what they're interested in, what they're hoping to get out of having a VISTA at their site. Do regular calls. We always prefer to do a video call so you can see each other and have that personal touch. And make sure that you're emailing regularly and giving people the opportunity to give you feedback. We're also experimenting this year with Teams channels to help keep communication open between meetings. And we're finding that this is creating a greater sense of community for our VISTA members and our host site supervisors. Don't forget to adapt. Don't get stuck in one way of doing things. We try to change things up if people prefer a video training versus a paper training. We try to meet them where they are so that they're getting the information that they need in a format that's helpful for them. Not everyone learns the same way. Not everyone likes to receive information in the same way. So adapt. Make sure that you're understanding people's communication preferences. Some people really like text messaging and some people hate it. So know how to reach your host site supervisors because each one may have a different perspective. And the most important one, I can't stress it enough, is communicate, communicate, communicate. Keep those lines of communication open, talk to them, talk to your VISTAs, talk to your host site supervisors, and make sure that you're building an overall community for your project.
I have to very briefly, Jamie, add on to the piece you mentioned about communication, because I know that I usually think that I communicate effectively. I think it works well, but do I really? Sometimes it depends on the person with whom I'm communicating. I may find it effective, but if the recipient does not, then it doesn't really work. As you mentioned, we need to be flexible and adapt to the changing situations and different people based on their communication styles. Thank you for sharing your details, Jamie, and for reminding us to carefully and critically look at our communication and our work to customize it so that each person and project can benefit the most. I know that Laura mentioned that she also has quite a few ideas that can help aid you in this endeavor, so take it away, Laura.
All right, I think this first point probably applies to all VISTA projects and not just multi-site management. We know that fighting generational systemic poverty is a long game. The inequitable structures that perpetuate poverty have become entrenched over hundreds of years, and it will take more than a year of service to undo these. Our members know this, of course, but they can still get discouraged. Our supervisors see things differently, I think, because they see the immediate impact that a dedicated VISTA member can make at their organization. So I think it's important to take the long view on poverty alleviation while celebrating the victories along the way. And these are not always small victories. 2 years ago, one of our VISTA members wrote an $80,000 grant for his site and received funding. Yet, we have successes like these each month that may be on a smaller scale, but they add up to a tremendous collective impact for our region. The final point may be more relevant for higher education sponsors, but please know that colleges and universities can be partners in all of this work. We see it as central to our public purpose. I'm an investigator on a research protocol that collects data from our VISTA members and supervisors during our site visits. We also send out a survey to gauge satisfaction and impact. From these data, we are able to learn about the impact our project is having over time. This is essential for taking the long view of poverty alleviation, a collective action approach, as well as building an evidence base in support of these capacity building efforts. This way, when we tell our story, we can combine both data and narrative to elevate our profile, inspire our members, and ultimately drive recruitment to our VISTA project.
Wow, those are excellent suggestions. Just as your VISTA members have a story to tell, so do you and your project. And as Laura mentioned, share that story with your board members, community, stakeholders, and even your social media accounts. Consider asking your VISTA members to record stories in writing or video to help attract new recruits and to spread the word about your VISTA project. Never underestimate the power and impact of storytelling so that you can celebrate your victories. Thank you both. In addition to what Jamie and Laura mentioned, you'll find additional suggestions and ideas on the VISTA campus. Some of the resources that may be helpful to you are located in the helpful links document, and I'll make sure to get that out to everyone with corrected links. If you have not yet visited the VISTA Campus website, please do so and create a free account. The campus has different sections for members, leaders, and supervisors based on necessary knowledge and resources for each group. The VISTA program exclusively uses this website for VISTA-related information, and it will become more useful to you as you get into your work. We'll highlight a few quick resources now. Some of the resources that we point you to, especially if you need assistance, are the Working with Subsites page. It's a section on the VISTA campus that contains links to recorded on-demand webinars, a task list, sample documents, and more. And before I continue, I should also mention that all of these resources, I will send them out, but you can also go to the VISTA Campus and click on the search field and just type in Working with Subsites or the title of a resource, and it'll show up. There's resources such as a sample syllabus on how to select, train, and communicate with your site supervisors, information on preparing new subsites, ideas on how to help your subsites recruit, and there's also other recorded on-demand webinars on topics such as Subsite Supervisor Orientation. How do you orient your subsites? There's a webinar on fostering strong intermediary and subsite relationships, really getting into the nitty-gritty of how do you create, cultivate, and sustain those relationships. And then there's also a recorded webinar on the introduction to training subsite supervisors. As we talked about, if you're an intermediary and you have subsites, you'll want to provide a certain amount of training to make sure they know what they're doing. So take a look at that webinar for some additional resources and insight. And we know that we love to have updated and relevant information on the VISTA Campus. We're constantly trying to update it and make sure it's relevant. So take the time to explore it and locate resources and materials that will help you do what you need to do better. You can navigate to certain areas using the menu options at the top of the page of the VISTA Campus. And you can also use the search field, as I mentioned before. Explore all that it has to offer and really make the site work for you. There's obviously resources outside of the VISTA Campus, but we love to point you to that website. At the beginning of the presentation, we asked you the question, what training do you currently provide to your site? We wanted to hear about your work, and we also wanted you to share with each other that you could share and keep ideas. So now that you've heard a lot of information from our guest speakers, we're going to ask you another question. What additional information, if any, do you need to successfully succeed in this endeavor? And how will you obtain this information? You can go ahead and type your answer in the chat panel if you have one. You may or may not. But at this point, especially if you're relatively new, you may not know what you need to know, and you may not know what you don't know. For those of you who do know what you need, I encourage you to thoroughly detail your needs, desires, and hopes, and then carefully consider what action steps you can take to achieve them, especially based on the feedback that Jamie and Laura presented. For example, you may say that the additional information you need is an understanding of what training your sites need and what training your VISTA members need to be successful. Well, one suggestion for an action step could be to put together a training needs assessment to specifically inquire about that from each of those entities. Or you may designate time on a regularly scheduled call or meeting to ask the question and solicit information later. Think not just about what is missing, but also how to get it, remembering that some great ideas were already shared in this webinar. So we'll go ahead and look at some of the ideas that have come in the chat. And I see some ideas to include busy supervisors in the training and orientation. So it sounds like some organizations have site supervisors who are really busy and don't have a lot of time, but making sure that you fit them into the orientation so that they're part of the work. Let me see, there's a comment about performance measures and making sure that people understand what performance measures people are following and how to accomplish that. There's a few more coming in because this really is important information to look at and understand. How do you train your sites? How do you make sure they have the resources they need? How do you make sure that they're performing well and really have the tools that you can give them or that we as a VISTA program can give them to succeed? I would encourage you that as you think of action steps, continue to think high level and also be very specific. Eventually, you will want to outline a timeline for completing the step, who else needs to or should be involved, what your expected outcome is, and a lot more. Obviously, you're not just taking action for the fun of it because you want positive results, and so do we. So before we get to questions and answers, let's take a look at some next steps that you can use to continue thinking about how to make your sites effective. First, look over your project plan and how you have outlined your sites. Reflect on the possible differences and similarities between your sites to help you think about different ways to engage and manage them. Many people have challenges with understanding the structure of a VISTA project, especially when it's an intermediary. So be sure to go over the structure in detail with your sites and with your VISTA members. Show them a chart that visualizes the structure and really helps them understand where they fit in and how everything is organized. If you are an intermediary, remind your sites about the requirements in the Memorandum of Understanding that you had them sign. You want to hold them accountable for those requirements and support them as needed. If you do not already have regular check-ins with your sites, schedule them. They don't have to be, obviously, they don't have to be every day, but it could be once a week, it could be once a month. Some projects do in-person meetings if they're geographically close. Others might do group conference calls, webinars, video chat, or even just phone calls. Some also may have separate one-on-one meetings with each site, depending on the needs of the site. Maintaining regular meetings not only helps you stay informed of questions and circumstances, and it also helps them know that you care and are supporting them, as well as building and maintaining relationships. You can even integrate some fun activities in the meeting to liven things up and really get to know them and how everything will work together. Now that we've taken care of those action items, we want to know what you thought of this webinar. How can we improve this presentation for future VISTA supervisors and supervisor webinars? There's also a question on what other webinar topics you would like. So please fill that out. We love to get your feedback, and we definitely take a look at all of that. You'll see the link in the chat panel. You can access the survey at any time. Also, when the webinar concludes and you close out, the survey should open up in the same internet browser where you joined this Zoom session. So thank you for sharing your feedback. It's now time for the exciting part, although all of this is exciting. So as you complete the evaluation and provide your feedback, we're going to take this time to answer a few of your questions. Again, we're going to try to answer as many as we can in the 15 minutes we have left. Remember that you can post your questions in the chat panel, as some of you have already been doing. If you'd like to ask a question by phone, you can use the raise hand feature. Again, open up the participants panel. Underneath, you'll see a button that says raise hand, and that'll be a cue to our producers, and they will call on you in a few minutes. So keep your questions coming in, and we'll go ahead and start looking at them now. So Laura and Jamie, a couple of questions that came in is, both of you mentioned some resources and planning workbooks and America Learns and things like that that people are interested in seeing or having access to. I'm not sure if you are able to share it, and if so, if you have a link that you can post in the chat, or if it's something you can send me and I can send out to everyone else after the webinar.
Yeah, so this is Jamie. So our service planning workbook, we can absolutely send that around to everyone. Eric, I can send it to you after this webinar for you to distribute.
Okay.
And then as far as America Learns, I have Lindsay Castellan here with me from our team, and she manages our America Learns information, our relationship, and can help answer any questions that people have on that service.
Hello, everybody. So America Learns is a great service that we use, and they offer a lot. It's a very powerful suite of tools that national service and other change-making organizations can use to track data or track other measurables relating to their work. I would recommend, I don't know the pricing off of the top of my head, but the people at America Learns are lovely and wonderful, and they provide tours of their services for free, and they will sit down with you and give you a complete overview of all of the things that they offer. So I would go to americalearns.net and schedule a tour. That's really the best way for you to get all of those questions answered. We've been using the America Learns service for about 3 years now, and it has really helped us keep on top of compliance because the system has a lot of automated functions. It can send emails and reminders to people that still need to submit reports or timesheets. There are easy ways to check compliance, and that makes things a lot easier for us.
Thank you for that. And one kind of additional question, there was a question earlier about, does America Learns have both AmeriCorps State and National and VISTA, or is it just for State and National?
That's a great question, and they actually work with a number of different models of AmeriCorps programs. So while I can't say definitively one way or the other, we are a VISTA project and we've utilized their services, and I know that there are other other organizations that use their services as well, and I believe some of them may be AmeriCorps National. They can really customize the system in any way that you need, so it's really not something that needs to be restricted by one program or the other.
Thank you, and that's a good reminder. I think everyone knows this, but there are some projects out there that do have both state and national members and VISTA members. Obviously, the VISTA program and AmeriCorps State and National are both very different in many ways, so there's different requirements and different restrictions, but it is possible for a project to have both. So another question I see coming from Grace is, there was a mention of crucial conversations, and the question is, what is that and how do you run that training? I believe one of you was talking in your comments about having crucial conversations with your sites, and it may not have been a specific training, but do you have any tips or ideas as to how do you have those crucial conversations?
I think that was actually something that came through the chats, and crucial conversations is, as I think this is what was being referenced, a book about communication strategies, and it has certified presenters and trainers that give certifications to participants, and that is not something that we have done, but I think that was what was referenced in the chat.
Okay, thank you. One question posed to everyone, so we won't necessarily answer it here, but in case anyone didn't see it, there was a question about how do other intermediary projects bring on new sites? So if you're on this webinar and you have ideas as to how your intermediary brings on new project sites, recruits them, brings them on, orients them, please go ahead and type that in the chat so that Alexandra and anyone else who had that question will be able to see the answer. There's another question that I will start to answer, and certainly Jamie and Laura, if you have additional feedback, please chime in. Katie asks, who keeps track of progress reports on CNCS performance measures? Should the subsite supervisor track this and report to the sponsor, or should the VISTA at each subsite track progress on these? I will say from my experience, and things have changed over the years, but from my experience, a lot of VISTA members specifically don't always either hear the term performance measures or they don't necessarily know much about them, which is not necessarily good or bad, but I say that to say sometimes it can be difficult to ask the VISTA members specifically to report on performance measures if they're not familiar with the topic. Typically, from what I've seen, it's usually a site supervisor or an intermediary, depending on how you set up your project, that understands what the performance measures are and reports on them, but one way that you can report on them is whether your VISTA member knows specifically what the performance measures are for your project or not. Oftentimes, a lot of intermediaries and even multi-sites will have their VISTA members put together somewhat of a monthly report outlining their activities, their accomplishments, their challenges, and then either a supervisor or a project director can later compile those into one master report for CNCS, which ultimately ties up to performance measures. But Jamie or Laura, do you have any other comments on who keeps track of progress on performance measures?
Yeah, so this is Jamie. So we do the latter that you were describing, Eric. So we have the VISTA's complete monthly and impact reports on the information that we need. And then we require the host site supervisors to make sure that they're getting those in. So they help us to stay on top of the compliance for the VISTA members to ensure we're getting the information we need. That way, when we have a grant report due, we have all of the reports caught up and can easily pull that information. Just another pitch for America Learns and something that we use it for and it's helpful for.
And this is Lindsay also with VIRST. We also have, we provide training on performance measures to our VISTA members, and we have some targets that we ask everybody to try to meet during their service year, and we make sure that all of the VISTAs understand what those mean. And we know that it can be kind of challenging for VISTAs to translate the work that they do into numbers. So we provide extensive training on that.
This is Laura. I think our process is substantially similar. When we do our in-person orientation, we spend a lot of time talking about our monthly reporting template, which essentially is the framework from which we extract the data to compile our reports up to CNCS. We also ask all of our supervisors to review and sign those monthly reports. So that's another compliance check for us as well. That ensures the integrity of the data. And then it also makes us confident that there's open communication between the members and the supervisors. And then something else that we've started to do, and this is relating to the question about onboarding new sites or site application process, is that we are providing a sort of one-pager on performance measures as part of our new site application, so that as prospective partner sites are putting together their letter of interest and an example VAD, they're also thinking about how can those VAD goals, objectives, and activities translate to the performance measures that we will be including on the monthly reports.
Great suggestions. A couple more questions. One is, and I'm not sure if Jamie or Laura, if you've had experience with this, but Grace was asking if either of you or if anyone else on this webinar has any experience with developing training retreats that include professional development for multi-site remote locations in one central location.
So this is Jamie. We do. So normally at the end of September or early October, we bring all of our VISTAs in for an on-site training. And then we provide training, much like Lindsay was saying, on the reporting that's required. We also did a resume builder, interview skills this year, which was new for us. And then we go over like our youth protection training. And we have guest speakers from all across FIRST, occasionally bring in outside speakers. We've invited our state officers to come in and talk to all of the VISTAs when they're here as well. And we've had great success with doing that large on-site training.
This is Laura. Same here. I think that we're fortunate that the university is sort of a central and midpoint for many of our sites, although last year we did hold one of our networking and training sessions in the Delta, which shortened the drive for a number of our host sites. I would say that we've had greater participation when we've done a doodle poll and tried to get this on the calendar of our supervisors. They are so incredibly busy that if we can try to tailor the topic to something that is relevant to them, our other insight is that the supervisors are always very eager to connect to departments at the university, and so it's been really beneficial for us to bring the members and the supervisors together on topics such as volunteer management, specifically partnering with the university, and then grant writing.
I want to go to one of those trainings. So I think the last question I see so far is, who chooses the performance measure, the site supervisors or the program director? That question is easy and difficult to answer, but I'll answer it by saying, ultimately, the person who chooses the performance measures is typically the entity that submits the either the concept paper, the application, the renewal, which oftentimes is the project or program director. However, it doesn't have to be done in a silo. For example, if your sites want to get involved, or if you want your sites involved, there's nothing wrong with having a conversation between the project or program director and your sites to say, here are the performance measures that we're looking at. Does this seem to make sense? Because you don't, as a project or program director, you don't want to say to your site, you have to do this performance measure if they're not equipped to do it or if they don't have any buy-in. So it's a good conversation to have with your sites about what the suggested performance measures are, get their feedback, and see if you need to make any adjustments. Jamie and Laura, any other comments about performance measures?
This is Laura. I think that application process that I described really opens the conversation, and I think it's also really helpful for our partner sites to know what we're doing behind the scenes and why their reporting and communication back up to us is so incredibly helpful.
And this is Jamie. I agree. I think you guys did a great job explaining that.
Well, before we get to the last slide, we have one more quick comment to make. And we know that you may not have had questions or you may still have additional questions, but there's plenty of ways to get information. Obviously, we talked about the VISTA Campus website, lots of resources and details. Some of you already shared your emails in the chat because you want people to follow up with you. That's an option as well. Don't forget to connect with other supervisors by using the Supervisor Cafe discussion forums. We really recommend using this to communicate and share resources. And again, if you have a question specifically related to your VISTA project, be sure to connect with your project director or your CNCS state or regional office. We want to let you know before we end that our next VISTA Supervisor webinar is scheduled for Tuesday, December 17th, and it's on VISTA member supervision, 6 strategies for success. And I will quickly mention this actually was developed because a lot of supervisors in past webinars said one of the challenges they have is how do you successfully manage and supervise VISTA members. So that's one more thing that shows we look at the evaluations and want to put together webinars that help you think of things you need, such as this one. So this webinar is ideal for anyone who supervises VISTA members, and it can also be useful for support staff who may want ideas on how to help VISTA members be successful. And just a quick note that we oftentimes are looking for additional supervisors who might be interested in being a guest speaker on future webinars, just like Jamie and Laura did. So if you do, feel free to email me, and I'll put my email in the chat in a minute, and we can certainly see about making that happen. So to conclude, we want to first say thank you for joining us on today's webinar. We do look forward to seeing you again. I really want to give a shout out and a thank you to Jamie Rich and Laura Martin for not just their time and dedication at their VISTA project, but for all the resources and information that they provided at this webinar and that they'll send me afterwards that I can send out to you. I also want to thank my editor and support team, Barbara Reynolds, and of course, Kim and Jeff for their fabulous working out the technology with Zoom. And of course, we really want to thank you for being a VISTA supervisor, a VISTA sponsor, and thank you for serving in that a very important role because what you do makes a difference. So thank you, and this webinar is now concluded.